What is up? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making this part of your day. However you're watching, however you're following the show, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend about the Ben Garcia Show, or you just want to keep it all to yourself, that is okay too. Happy Thanksgiving. You will probably be getting this sometime the day after Thanksgiving if I work really hard tonight, which don't cross your fingers on that this will probably be up in the morning. We'll see how that goes. That's a lot of work. It is Thanksgiving, but we are getting you guys another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. I will be flying out to Minnesota tomorrow for the Arizona Cardinals Minnesota Vikings game. Thought it might be fun to get some stuff out for you guys while I do this and get ready to go. And then also, I'm a scared flyer. I'm a very frightened flyer. I've only flown a few times in my life. The first time I'd ever flown was like when I was 22. And I need something to keep me occupied, and the editing for this will be good. Something to keep my mind off of everything, so that's another reason why you're getting that. So do not get used to 2 Ben Garcia shows in 1 week. That is a lot of work, and as you guys may know, you are looking at the editor, producer, content creator, social media manager, and scriptwriter, ? Is that what you call it when you come up with content? Either way, that is enough blabbering. It is Thanksgiving. We had a bunch of really good games today. Well, 2 really good games. I guess I don't want to lie to you right off the bat. But with that being said, let's jump right into it. Let's start off with the morning game that a lot of people saw. That is the 10:30 a.m. game, which is such a weird time to start a game. Start that game at 11, start that game at 10, 10:30. I thought was a very strange start time. I'm assuming they do that every year, and I'm just questioning it for the millionth time. But the Detroit Lions beat the Chicago Bears, and let's jump into the Chicago Bears side of things before I jump into the Detroit Lions, which I have a lot to say about the Lions. What was really good about today's games is I wasn't really doing anything else. I was able to really get my thoughts together, watch this game, watched it with my wife too. For some reason, she was into the game today, which was fun. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears. The Bears, over the last couple weeks, have lost to a Hail Mary where a player was messing around and talking with the crowd pre-Hail Mary, was trash-talking the crowd while that Hail Mary was going on. They lose that game. They have lost on a missed kick, and now they lose because the head coach doesn't call a timeout. There are people out there going after Caleb Williams. Now, if there was anyone who has been 1,050% right, and even add maybe a little bit more on there about Caleb Williams, it's been me. I was spot on about Caleb Williams. And I feel like I was one of the few people that was holding their horses a bit on the hype of Caleb Williams. Last year, I remember I did a video that did like 250,000 views on YouTube, and another one that got like 300,000 views on TikTok. And the first one was going after, because I'll do this from time to time, going after Nick Wright for putting Caleb Williams at the top of his Mahomes mountain, basically his quarterback hierarchy. And I had said, what? We're putting a player who hasn't played a snap in the NFL, hasn't won a meaningful bowl game, ahead of Mahomes and Burrow and Allen and Jackson and CJ Stroud. We're putting him in the category of the tier 1 elite quarterbacks already, coming out of college, and he hasn't won a singular elite level bowl game. I don't even know if he won a single bowl game. I know in that Holiday Bowl, he wasn't playing. It was Moses Miller, whatever the kid's name is. And I had said, wait a second. I think Caleb's going to be good too. But this is going to take time. And it was that combined with the Chicago Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. And we're just passing over that fact that the Bears have never been able to develop a quarterback. They are one of the few teams in the NFL who have never had a franchise quarterback, not one. And they're also one of the oldest teams in the NFL. And I said, you combine all those things together, and yeah, I get he's a really high quarterback talent, but we're We're just going to put him up with the top 3, top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. That was silly, and I've been mostly right. Caleb has shown some flashes, but has largely been held back because of the coaching and because of the organization that is the Chicago Bears. And what you saw today was full display. I'm not going to blame Caleb Williams for not calling a timeout. I'm not going to blame Caleb Williams for changing the play on the last play of the game. I'm not blaming any of that. If he didn't know that they didn't have a timeout, I'm not blaming Caleb Williams. Rookies make those mistakes. I expect rookies to be learning on the job. I don't expect employees who just started at an organization or at a firm or whatever it is to know everything right away. He's been on the job for like 6 months of being the face of a franchise. Hey, he screws up sometimes. In year 3, year 4, maybe even year 2, I'm not going to be as forgiving. That's what the head coach is for. And through the last few weeks, we've seen them lose on a Hail Mary where one of his cornerbacks was messing around with the crowd and trash-talking the crowd while the Hail Mary is going on. We've seen them lose on a missed kick, and we saw them lose today because no one called a timeout, where my wife, who doesn't watch football as much as me, is saying, what are they doing? That is how egregious it was. And that should be the final straw for Matt Eberflus. Come Monday morning, come Sunday afternoon, he should be fired. And this isn't something that is a hot take. But I said something that recently came back up in my YouTube feed from the archives or whatever. But last season, Matt Eberflus should have been fired last year. But Chicago Bears fans were telling me, no, he's a good head coach. Look at the second half of the season. He had a really good defense. Awesome. Those were the same Bears fans that were telling me Justin Fields was the answer to their problems. And he can't beat out Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. But this Matt Eberflus team, this Chicago Bears team that still employs Matt Eberflus, the time to let him go was last year. Now you're 6 months, 8 months too late. You had coaching candidates out the wazoo. Ben Johnson at the time was still a candidate. Mike Vrabel was a candidate. Bill Belichick was a candidate. Dave Canales was a candidate. The Titans head coach, whose name I think it's Brian Callahan, was a candidate. There were guys everywhere. There was a surplus of good head coaches. And you stuck it out with Matt Eberflus. You had a new quarterback coming into the fold who had all this talent and was seen as by far the number 1 prospect. And you stuck with the defensive guy. That is egregious. Everyone that's saying fire Matt Eberflus now, you're 8 months too late to the party. I've been saying this for about a year now, that he should have been gone last year. At least 10 months I've been here saying this guy should be gone. You had the chance to bring in a new head coach, to form an alliance with Caleb Williams, an offensive guy to help guide him in the NFL, and he didn't do it. And it was clear as day obvious that Matt Eberflus was not the guy. And you passed up on Bill Belichick, you passed up on Mike Vrabel, you passed up on Ben Johnson, you passed up on Brian Callahan, you passed up on Dave Canales, and you stuck with the defensive guy who's got a terrible record as a head coach. The time to move on from Matt Eberflus was 8 months ago. It ain't now. And now you have to do it mid-season because he's been that bad, and pray some head coaching candidate that isn't scared away from the so-so season of Caleb Williams to come save your organization. Consistently, this is what bad organizations do, like the Chicago Bears, who have been a debacle since the early 2000s. This is just rinse and repeat. Hopefully, this time, they'll get it right. Because losing those 3 games by a field goal block on a Hail Mary where the player is trash-talking the crowd mid-play and not calling a timeout and letting the clock run out where Caleb Williams got sacked with 30 seconds on the clock, that is coaching. That is not the players. That is mismanaged. That is a mismanaged organization. Fire Matt Eberflus, move on, and pray a good candidate will take that job. Now, moving on really quickly to the Lions side of things, because I do want to mention them. The Lions remind me of the San Francisco 49ers of a couple of years ago. They've got guys everywhere. And an offensive head coach an offensive coordinator who is going to be the next Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay. This is the time to strike. If you are going to win, and there's another team as well that reminds me of the 49ers, even more so, that I'll talk about later in the show. But time is ticking on the Detroit Lions. I'll be honest with you. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl last year, and I thought they would pull back this year. Because oftentimes, you look back and think that is when you should have struck oil. And now, and it usually doesn't go to the future, where usually the best is behind you. Now with the Detroit Lions, I am totally back on board. I was never off board, but I just thought another year of film. Are we really sure about Jared Goff? I'm still back on board. And I don't want to change my Super Bowl prediction because that's just not fun. I'll still take the Packers, my preseason prediction. But this Lions team has everything it needs to go to the Super Bowl. They've got not one, but two good backs. Tim Patrick's a good number 3. Amon-Ra St. Brown is clearly a number 1. Sam Laporta, Jamison Williams, and an offensive line that might be the best in the NFL. The defense can be a little so-so at times. But if you make a deep playoff run, Aiden Hutchinson could be back. This is the time to strike. It's not next year. Last year, clearly I was wrong. And potentially this team is maybe going to make a run for a while. But they need to act with some urgency. I love the addition of Zadarius Smith. I love going and getting a guy to replace Aiden Hutchinson, even if it isn't to the level of Aiden Hutchinson. But it's go time. This is the time to win a Super Bowl. And to be honest with you, it might be fun. This Lions team is absolutely fun, and they have the makeup of a team that could win a Super Bowl. They beat up on everyone. And I'm not going to go after them because they played a close home game against the Chicago Bears. Division games are weird. And division games post-Thanksgiving, or in this case, on Thanksgiving and later in the season, are just weird. This happens all the time. But overall, this Lions team is fun. They've got an OC that for some reason is just happy in his job and still hasn't taken a head coaching job. They are loaded everywhere offensively. I have some questions defensively, but this is an offensive-driven league. Defense no longer wins championships. But the Lions got to act with urgency. This team is really, really good. Looks like if things hold, they'll be the 1 seed in the playoffs. And with a guy like Jared Goff who just continues to prove people wrong, this team looks destined for a real Super Bowl run. But they cannot look towards the future. They have to get it done now. There were more games on Thanksgiving today. I will spare you some analysis on the Cowboys and Giants if you want analysis on that. I'm sure there are plenty of Giants and Cowboys fan pages who also didn't cover the game because they'd rather spend time with their family on Thanksgiving. But check the ESPN highlights. I'm sure they'll have something for you. A game that was really interesting, not because it was competitive or close or even fun to watch at times, but there were narratives that teams were trying to flip. And there were narratives at some point in this game where you're like, maybe they're going to get broken. Maybe they're not. Here's where it is. Let's start with the Miami Dolphins. Let's start with the losing team again. The jury is out on Tua Tagovailoa. We know what he is. He is officially in the Dak Prescott tier of quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa is just left-handed Dak Prescott with about the same amount of mobility. Maybe a little bit more mobility. Both guys are uberly overpaid. Both guys are super valuable to their franchise. And without Dak Prescott on the Dallas Cowboys and without Tua Tagovailoa on the Miami Dolphins, they're a tire fire. But just like Dak Prescott, we know what Tua Tagovailoa is. He's not a postseason quarterback. He's largely overpaid, but really valuable to his team. Because we saw what happened when this team didn't have Tua for a few weeks. They were a real-life tire fire. But the story is out. The book is out on Tua Tagovailoa. He's not a postseason guy. He's not going to carry you to a Super Bowl. And his inability to play well in cold weather is just so obvious at this point that you can look at the statistics and they'll fool you. 37 for 46, 365 yards, 2 touchdowns, sacked 5 times, a passer rating of 114. If you just look at that box score, you're like, what are you talking about? Tua was awesome today. I watched the game. It was a lot of dink and dunk for a really long time. And then when they got down big, he took advantage of some prevent coverages. But Tua, it's official. He can't play in any element that isn't indoors or sunny and 75 degrees. He's not alone. There's a lot of quarterbacks that can't do that. Brock Purdy is in that element where he's not great outside of a perfect light conditions. Jared Goff, there's statistics out there that he's not the best in inclement weather. But Tua is what he is. He's Dak Prescott. Roughly the same amount of money that both guys are making. Both uberly overpaid. Both talented. Both won't carry you in the playoffs. Both can't win a Super Bowl. But are still very valuable to their organizations and will keep each team viable and interesting. You could do a lot worse than Dak Prescott and Tua Tagovailoa. But you could also do a lot better. And Tua, there's a reason why he doesn't have very many playoff wins, if any at all. If I'm not mistaken, Tua doesn't have any playoff wins. And there's a reason why that when conditions aren't perfect, he's not the same guy. And just like Dak, he'll always be good. But matched up against guys like Jordan Love or Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, who are all 3 in his conference, he will always look small. And that's another thing as well with the Miami Dolphins. The story is out on Tua Tagovailoa. He's not the guy to win them a Super Bowl. And I understand why they paid him. Because it was a long time since Dan Marino, and they were doing a Ryan Fitzpatrick and just nonsense at quarterback for years. I get paying the guy when you know he's at least viable and keeps your team interesting. But they've put themselves in quarterback purgatory. They will always be floating around playoff positioning, but with Tua Tagovailoa as their quarterback, it'll be just like Dak Prescott. They'll never be able to win multiple playoff games in the same year. And really quickly, just about the Miami Dolphins as a whole, they have to change their identity. They've got to mix things up in the offseason. This identity of speed kills, it's not working. And it hasn't for some time. I think Mike McDaniel is a very bright head coach. Some of the play schemes he had today were just filthy. And he made that game interesting towards the end outside of, for some reason, teams just refuse to hand the ball off on the 1 yard line to their running back, but that's neither here nor there. Outside of that, Mike McDaniel is very smart. But this identity of speed kills, it doesn't work in the NFL. A Lamborghini is really fun in 75 and sunny and the top down. But once you have to get in the nitty gritty and you have to travel to Green Bay or you have to travel to Buffalo or Kansas City, it's better to have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. Tyreek Hill is fun, but he is kind of small and he's redundant to what this Dolphins team is. I would hold on to Jalen Waddle and see what you can get for Tyreek Hill in the offseason. I would try to become a bigger, more physical football team because that translates better from 75 and sunny in Miami to when you have to go on the road to frigid temperatures in Kansas City. Miami's got to change their identity. They've got to go from Maserati, Lamborghini speed kills to a tough physical football team. And I'm not sure if you can do that with Tua Tagovailoa as your quarterback. Maybe at some point they just make a change. I don't know. But I know you have to do something because what you're doing now isn't working. And doing the same thing over and over again, we've heard that a billion times. It's insanity. Now let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. This was also, the Lions and Packers, it's crazy because both teams are in the NFC North. And, it's funny. This is almost an NFC North podcast because I'm going to talk about the Cardinals and Vikings next. But the NFC North is just loaded. And the Green Bay Packers are a part of that loaded NFC North that is just phenomenal. The Packers they seem to be just a step behind the Detroit Lions. But what they are the San Francisco 49ers, very similar to the Detroit Lions, but even more so. They are the San Francisco 49ers of a few years ago with Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, all those guys in their prime, but not with Brock Purdy at quarterback, with Jordan Love. I've been so high on Jordan Love and his ability to fit the ball in windows and clearly play in frigid temperature and it not bother him. Big, strong kid with a massive arm, similar to Brett Favre, but a little bit more conservative than him. He's not quite the gunslinger Favre was, but he's also not quite as precise as Aaron Rodgers was. He is almost directly in the middle, but I would give it a little bit more of a nudge towards the Favre era. But there's no way this Packers team, if it's not this year, in the next 4 to 5 years, doesn't win a Super Bowl. They are one of the youngest offenses in the NFL. And man, let me tell you, that Jaden Reed kid, I don't know how they don't get the ball to him more. There was times where he wasn't on the field. I don't know if he's dealing with an injury. I actually think he might have been, but he is electric. He is Deebo Samuel for the Packers from the San Francisco 49ers reference that I just made. But that team, I just can't quit them. There's a reason why the Green Bay Packers were my preseason Super Bowl prediction to go up against the Kansas City Chiefs and win the Super Bowl this year. Because Jordan Love is phenomenal. He does some things that will make you rip your hair out, but there is no doubting the talent. He's mobile, he's got a massive arm, and he's got a short memory. That guy will sling it. Combined with all the talent they have around them, Jaden Reed, Josh Jacobs, which was a phenomenal signing, Kraft the tight end, Dontavian Wicks is like their 5th best wide receiver. With Matt LaFleur running the show, and that defense that is starting to look better this year, and just the organizational shield that is the Green Bay Packers that just bleeds competency, I just can't quit them. And it's why I feel so good about them going into January and potentially February and late December, because they have the makeups of a Super Bowl team. They have the quarterback. They've got the weapons. They are the San Francisco 49ers with better quarterback play of a few years ago. Instead of Brock Purdy, it's Jordan Love. If you stuck Jordan Love on the 49ers last year, I think they win the Super Bowl. That's the difference. And when you add the capable head coaching and the structural, competent organization that is the Green Bay Packers and all the weapons and the defense that's starting to play better, and they continuously draft and developing well, this team, I just can't quit them. And if they made the Super Bowl this year, I would not be surprised. They have everything you need to go into any type of climate, any type of atmosphere, and win. And it's why, at this point, I'll stick with them as my preseason Super Bowl prediction to even now. And partially because it's just not fun to switch up your prediction. But some thoughts there from the Dolphins, some thoughts there from the Packers. I have seen enough of the Tua, Tyreek Hill experience. That team's got to break it up, and on the complete inverse, I just could not quit the Green Bay Packers. They are so infatuating, and it just makes me feel even better, or I'm so infatuated with them, but it just makes me feel even better. That when everyone said, hey, don't get rid of Aaron Rodgers, and I said, what are we doing, guys? If they're getting rid of Aaron, they know Jordan Love can play. And it just feels good to be right on that one. All right, let's wrap up the show with something that I do every single week. It is not Friday. It is Thursday night that you are getting a Cardinals, a Vikings preview. You guys are obviously getting a full show today, but let's do it. I was going to do this in the morning, but I figured if I really tried to film this in the morning while also trying to go to yet another Thanksgiving thing, while also trying to catch my flight to Minnesota, my wife might kill me. So I decided to do everything tonight and get it all out by the morning. But with that being said, I am going to this game, the Cardinals-Vikings game. I will be there in Minnesota. I'll be at the game. We're going with another married couple friend, my buddy, who's a huge Vikings fan. He's excited to go. I'm excited to go. Any sort of content you guys might want from there, I'll try to make it happen, but mostly just going to enjoy my time being a fan there. I don't get to do this a ton. I mostly go to these games as media or, not as a fan. I'm trying to come up with takes. I'm trying to come up with opinions, and I'll do that when I'm there, but I'm mostly going to let loose and be a fan. Who knows? I might even wear a jersey. I might just go full fanboy out for my Cardinals fans in the comment section who sometimes get upset because I don't lead into the fandom. I lead into the truth serum, but tell me what you guys might want from that experience. It should be a ton of fun. We'll be flying out tomorrow. I'll be there till Monday. So you'll definitely get a later Ben Garcia show next week. But I'm excited and it should be fun. But let's talk about this game. And maybe at some point you guys will see a little bit of Minnesota, I don't know, vlogging or something there. Who knows? We'll see. But the Cardinals are going into Minneapolis this weekend. It's not just the Cardinals, obviously me as well. And they're going up against a Minnesota Vikings team. You go back, you take time to move away from that Seahawks loss, which I can't lie to you, it was devastating. I expected them to be better. I expected them to come out of a bye with a vengeance and to be rested and to be well prepared, and they just weren't that. I'm not out on this team. I'm not kicking them when they're down. That's nonsense. They're still young. They're still learning. But I did expect more from Jonathan Gannon. And I largely, if you watch the full show and listen to the full podcast, I did blame Jonathan Gannon. I did blame the coaching staff. That is who was to blame. But I've seen this team after getting beaten up on the road, whether it was against the Packers or losing to the Bills, they usually bounce back. And they usually bounce back pretty well. They beat the they beat the 49ers. They beat the Rams after those two games. And they show some real competency. And they show some real preparation. But make no mistake, to anyone who is the casual NFL fan and I don't mean, I feel like I always have to say this, but I don't mean casual in a bad way. I am the expert. I'm the guy that sits there and watches games all day. You are the fan that just enjoys it and lives your life accordingly and probably the right way. I should be the one that has a well-informed opinion of other teams. You should just be a fan of the Cardinals and allow me to do that. But if you are just the casual NFL fan, again, nothing wrong with that, and you look at this Vikings team and they're 9-2, and you say, well, I got Sam Darnold. We're not buying into that. This Vikings team is good. This Vikings team is for real. And it's a lot of Kevin O'Connell and the weapons of the Vikings. I'm not saying Sam Darnold won't be prone to the occasional interception or the occasional boneheaded decision, but this team's good. And you look at the defense of Brian Flores, and he has got some quarterbacks in hell. This is going to be a dogfight. And I'll give my prediction at the end. But let's start here. As if we haven't already started. But let's really dig into it here. I want to start defensively. I don't apologize for being wrong on things. I don't apologize for having an opinion in sports. If I attack someone personally and I feel like it was a personal shot, I'll apologize. I'm not above that. But it's a sports take. However, I will say when I was wrong. I just have to trust this Cardinals defense. They're just good. They've only allowed 1 touchdown in a month. They weren't the reason they lost to the Seahawks last week. The offense didn't show up. That, at the end of the day, felt like a Mike McDonald defense that is starting to really come together, combined with a NFC West showdown where the a home team just felt like they had a little bit more of an edge. This Vikings team is really, really good. And this offense that they have got a lot of weapons. I won't be surprised if this Cardinals defense gives up 35 points on the road to a Vikings team. But what I will say to that is I won't be surprised anymore if they're able to limit this team to 18 points, 20 points, because that's what they've done. I can only cite results. Over the past month, they've only given up a touchdown to opposing offenses. I mean, that is 85 Bears stuff. So I'm just going to expect that they're going to play well. And if I get shot in the foot, if I shoot myself in the foot for that, I shoot myself in the foot for that. I won't be surprised, but I'm done being surprised either way. This defense is just good, but I will say it is largely propped up by Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawlis. And they're going to get Darius Robinson back this week. I've talked with a couple of people, and I saw my buddy Johnny Venerable over at PHNX Sports, who I've done stuff with before, and worked with him briefly over at PHNX when I was an intern there. Really good dude. He put out that he thought Darius Robinson would be here next week. He's the insider. He's a really smart guy. Really good dude, too. And I was surprised. I was really surprised that this team decided that they were going to hold on to Darius Robinson last week. Because last week was not a gimme win. It was a there for the taking win. And now you have Darius Robinson this week, where he'll probably still have some rust, but man, was he dominating in training camp. This is a good Cardinals offensive line, not elite, but good. He was shoving guys around. I mentioned I was at training camp. I was on the sideline with the media. I got an up close and personal look. That dude can play. I just don't know how it's going to look in the first game of the season, or if he's going to be limited, but ultimately, they are getting reinforcements. I just expect this defense to continue to be good. Here is the kicker. This might be Kyler Murray's biggest game as a pro, as a Cardinal. If you were watching the Cardinals years ago against the Rams in the playoffs, yes, he was awful. I don't know if that was his biggest game of his career, because that team was skidding, and we were all just kind of happy that they made the playoffs, even though it ended up being a fairly disappointing season. Thank you, Cliff Kingsbury. But this might be the most important game, at minimum, of the last half decade or so of Kyler's career, the last 3 years of Kyler's career. The point is, it is a very, very important game for Kyler Murray this weekend. Potentially the most important game of his career. He has to play well. They can lose, but they cannot lose because Kyler Murray got outplayed by Sam Darnold. If you win this game with Geno Smith, Drake May, and Bryce Young coming up, there is a very good chance you could secure a spot in the playoffs. And you had that chance last week, and this didn't have to be a must-win game in Minneapolis if you wanted to ensure a playoff spot. But it is now, and it's very important for Kyler to play well. I have been a defender of Kyler, but I've always been honest about Kyler. Still think he's a great quarterback. He needs to play well this weekend. We cannot be talking about a Kyler Murray who didn't show up to play in Minneapolis for God knows what reason. If there's one thing about Kyler that we still need an answer to is, can he play well in big spots? Can he be consistent in big spots? And Kyler will do things oftentimes that will leave your jaw dropped on the ground. But he's never played amazing in a big game, in a big spot, especially on the road. And he's got to do that this time. And he's got to outplay Sam Darnold. And it doesn't mean they have to win. It doesn't mean they have to win. The defense could give up 40 points, and it's just not fair to Kyler. He can't keep up with the opposing team, but he's got to be good. I'm talking 250 yards passing, another 50 rushing, 2 touchdowns. He's got to be really, really good. He's got to outplay Sam Darnold. This team needs Kyler Murray to play well because this Vikings offense is really good. And Brian Flores on the defensive side of the ball will make you look silly. He's done that to multiple quarterbacks this year, including CJ Stroud and Brock Purdy. He's got to answer the bell. The kid gloves are off. I love Kyler. I think he's an amazing talent. I think at the pinnacle of his greatness, he could be a top 6 quarterback. But he's got to show up this weekend. He could lose a lot of people. He could lose a lot of supporters this weekend. He could potentially lose me this weekend if he puts up a stinker, or if he's largely irrelevant, or if he played like he played last week in Seattle. He's got to travel well. He's got to get in there, and he's got to deliver. 250 yards passing, maybe another 25 to 50 yards rushing, and 2 touchdowns of some sort, either passing or rushing. He cannot be the reason that they lost, that we cannot be talking about a game that the Cardinals lost because we all said Kyler Murray just didn't do enough. Massive, massive game for Kyler. He's got to be awesome. And not only just with Kyler. Jonathan Gannon, just really quickly, after we get off the Kyler thing, who has to be really good, Jonathan Gannon's got to get this team to play. He's got to get this team up and ready to play. I believe he will. I'm going to this game. I want them to win. I don't often go as a fan to things. I go to a lot of things as media. I'm not cheering. I'm not fanboying. I'm not chugging beers. I'm not slapping hands. I'm not kissing babies. I want them to win this game. And I think Kyler's going to play well. But I got to be honest. This Vikings team is pretty good. They've got weapons everywhere. Brian Flores has been really, really good this year. I'll take, unfortunately, as your honest analysis, my heart says Cardinals, my head says Vikings, and I've got to lean towards my head rather than my heart. I'll go Vikings 31, Cardinals 25, in a close one, and not eliminating them from playoff contention, but just making things a little bit harder to get in. With that being said, again, I'll be at this game. Let me know if you guys want some content from that, but either way, I'm excited, and it should be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for tuning into the Ben Garcia Show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend about the Ben Garcia Show. You guys probably won't get a show on Tuesday of next week. Again, I'll be in Minneapolis. I'll be in Minnesota, going to the Cardinals Vikings game, doing all the things there from Friday to Monday. And I usually film that show Tuesday morning. Who knows how I'll be feeling? Maybe I'll have more content for you guys. We'll see. I'm keeping that open-ended, but you've been getting a lot of shows recently, so don't you complain. Either way, guys, appreciate the support. I think last time I checked, this channel's at like 1.7 million views all time. That is amazing. And this show just continues to go because of people like you, so thank you so much for liking, for sharing, subscribing. I appreciate you guys allowing me to do this. And I will talk to you guys next week and potentially until Tuesday. I'm Benjamin Garcia, and it's been the Ben Garcia Show.